Good morning. I am Lisa Acevedo from Penn News, and today I am joined with United States Senator Chris Coons. Hello, Chris.
Good morning, Louisa.
How are you doing today?
I'm great. Happy to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. So I'm just going to dive right into the interview. So, as a senator, a lot of responsibilities and duties fall upon you. What does an average day look like for you?
Average day, Louisa, is pretty busy. In the Senate, I'm on 5 different committees. So on a typical day when I'm in Washington, I run back and forth between committee hearings, votes on the Senate floor, meetings with Delawareans who have come to visit me in Washington, working with my own staff, doing research, giving speeches. Pretty full day. If I'm here in Delaware, I get to do lots of different fun things. Earlier today, I did a Black History Month roundtable with Black-owned small businesses. I'm here with you. I'm having lunch with our Attorney General to talk about public safety and crime issues. Then I have a Delaware Democratic Party meeting. And tomorrow night, we're celebrating 100 years of chicken in Delaware, so I'll be in Dover at an agriculture event.
Seems like a pretty hectic schedule.
It's busy.
So what do you do on your free time if you have free time? Or
I don't really have free time. What I do if I have time that I'm not working is spend time with my wife and kids. We're blessed to have twin 23-year-old boys. And I have a 21-year-old daughter and my wife. And we live here in Wilmington, and if I've got time, I love spending time with them.
What's it like raising twins?
Fabulous. It's incredible. They're fraternal. They're very fraternal. And different interests, different trajectories in life. But, you know, I love all 3 of my kids. They're incredible. And my wife's done an amazing job raising 3 really healthy, balanced, smart, fun people.
And how do you keep being a politician and while being a father of 3 balanced?
It's a challenge. One of the decisions we made very early, so I spent 12 years in county government here, 10 years in county government here. I got elected to the Senate 12 years ago. We decided we wanted to keep our family here, so they stayed the same parish, same church, same neighborhood, and I commuted to Washington. So the good news, bad news, it's a 4-hour commute, 2 hours down, 2 hours back. So while they were still here in school, I came home every night so I could go to different sports matches or help with homework or be present. But that meant, you know, my day started very early.
Yeah, early morning. So I know that you were raised in Connecticut. Well, you were born in Connecticut, and then you moved to Delaware and resided in Hockessin? Hockessin, sorry. So what was that like growing up?
Hockessin was really quiet. It was a very small, mostly mushroom farming town in 1970 when my family moved there. Today it's a booming metropolis of 5,000 people, I think. I was incredibly bored. I think most young people are bored wherever they are. But I remember my best friend from middle school, we were sort of laying out in the grass on someone's yard and looking up at the sky, and he said, you know, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I don't care. I just don't want to be this bored again. His name is Charles. He called me not too long ago, a couple years ago, when I was in the Senate having a crazy day, and he saw me on TV. And he said, so, how's it going? Still bored? And I said, no, I'm not bored.
Busy schedule now. So, you've had a long career in politics. Could you tell us some of the projects you're most proud of you worked on for Delaware?
So, first, and this is just a process thing, I have a really great office. I have a really good team of people who like each other, who work well together, and who get that we work for you. So when there's folks who call with a problem or an issue, whether it's veterans or Social Security, immigration, or healthcare, they do a great job of getting back to them and helping them and connecting them to resources. And that brings me joy, because at the end of the day, that's my job. In terms of something that I take a little pride in because I get to see it, there's a project at the University of Delaware. It's an institute for manufacturing vaccines and pharmaceuticals. The guy who really created it, Dr. Kelvin Lee, was an intern or a fellow in my office in D.C. when he sort of really developed the idea. We've gotten over $150 million of federal investment to get that built. When I used to commute to Washington in the morning, I'd look out the window, and it was the old Chrysler plant that was in the process of being torn down. Now I get to see these, beautiful brand new buildings full of people working. That's kind of cool. Yeah. We've done a lot around affordable housing and the opioid addiction crisis in the last few years. And so there's some specific projects I'm proud of that have invested in community-based treatment, in providing first responders with Narcan and being part of our state's response. Last, there's an initiative called Reach Riverside that is rebuilding the Riverside neighborhood of Northeast Wilmington. The head of that, Logan Herring, was my guest for the State of the Union. And it was great to sit down with Logan and talk about how that project has gone from conception to execution.
So I know you played a role in I Have a Dream Foundation. Could you give us a little bit more about that?
Sure. A guy named Eugene Lang was himself raised in Harlem in the Depression, and he was a product of a public school, PS 121, and he went on to be very successful. He was lucky enough to get a scholarship to Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania. Many, many years later, he was invited to be the graduation speaker for 8th grade, so for kids going from 8th grade to high school. And he'd prepared this big speech, and he stood up there and he was giving this speech about, you can make it in America, it's the land of opportunity. And he's looking out at kids who are sitting in the same seats and the same desks that he was at, because the school hadn't changed in 60 years. And he said, you know something, I can tell you don't believe me. Like, you don't know what I'm talking about. This doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to make you a personal promise. If you can't find a way to afford college, I will pay for it. And if you come meet me after this speech in my office, I'll give you a letter that says that. Well, it's a long story, but I met Gene Lang, and I got to see the impact his program and his vision had on kids all over the country. So in 1988, working with my family and some other folks in our community, we started a similar program at Bancroft Middle School on the east side of Wilmington. Most of the kids, we call them dreamers, who were in that class are now in their early 40s. And I'm still in touch with many of them. It was a great blessing for me to have some role in helping launch the I Have a Dream chapter here in Delaware. And then I moved to New York and worked for Gene Lang for 3 years all over the country, helping grow the program and helping strengthen it. So it was a great adventure.
Yeah. So you've lived in New York for 3 years, is that right?
I've lived in New York twice, a total of 4 years. Yeah.
Okay. So what would you say life was like then? Or
Wow.
Did you like it, enjoy it?
So as we talked about, I grew up in Hockessin, which was a really quiet little town. I found the first 6 months I was in New York, it was like I was going deaf. There was so much noise. Our offices were between a fire station and a police station, and there was a siren going off all the time, and there was traffic, and we were right next to Grand Central Station, to Penn Station. And there was just so much noise all the time and so many people. I lived and worked with a guy who was my best friend growing up in Hockessin. And I remember once turning to him on the subway and saying, you realize we see more people in our 20-minute commute to work on this subway than we would see in an entire year in Hockessin as kids. New York was fun. It was an adventure. It was challenging. It was demanding. I loved what I was working on, and I enjoyed it. I think everyone should try living in New York at some point. My daughter lives in New York right now in the East Village.
And do you still contact her? Or?
I'm visiting her in New York Sunday night into Monday.
That's great.
After the Eagles win the Super Bowl.
So, what is one of your favorite memories growing up in Hockessin, or?
I have a lot of memories. There was a pond not far from the neighborhood I grew up in, and just hanging out with my dog and fishing and roaming around in the woods with friends. I went to HB Middle School, and it was brand new back then. It was only, I think, its second or third year it was open. I have a lot of great memories. I was very active in the Boy Scouts. We did a lot of scouting. So, I mean, these are not very exciting memories, but they're fond memories for me.
That's great. So, I know that you went to multiple universities as you grew up, and you went to the University of Nairobi in Kenya. What was that like?
That was really special. So I went to a college in Massachusetts for 4 years, but I took one semester and did a semester abroad, and I went to the University of Nairobi, University of Kenya, Nairobi. And it'd be hard to convey just what an impact that had on me. To sit with young students who were Kenyan and hear their perspective about the United States and our role in the world, and to have to deal with criticisms, questions, and challenges. At the time, there was a government in South Africa that was a white supremacist government, literally. And our president at the time was supporting that government. And the college students who I was studying with were very critical of that. And I spent a lot of time debating with them about America, our values, our principles, our place in the world. And it really challenged a lot of my core beliefs and ideas about our role in the world. I believe America is a country that is and can be a real force for good. But it also tested me to be able to articulate that and be able to contribute to that.
So after doing research,
Yes.
I also found out that you changed your political party from Republican to Democrat. And does being in Kenya and being in the University of Nairobi have to do with anything
Sure.
with the change of party?
As I mentioned at the time, this was a long time ago, Ronald Reagan was president, and the debates that I had with other students, within my family and my community, about our role in the world led me to change my party affiliation. My family were really moderate Republicans, and most of them are now moderate Democrats. More than anything, they believed in getting along and working together. And I've tried to respect my family's values while also bringing my own priorities and values into the work I do.
Did you face a lot of backlash after that? And if you did,
Yes.
how did you deal with that?
Well, some of my friends on my college campus were very unhappy with me with that change. Some of my family was very unhappy with me, but I was confident in what I was doing. I tried to be respectful and to listen to their criticism and concerns, but also to continue in the direction I decided on.
That's great. Would you give any advice to anybody out there who is having,
Similar challenges?
Yes. Thank you.
Look, be respectful of your parents and your family, but realize that you're meant to be, each of us has our own sort of gifts and our own journey, and part of what makes America special is that we give people the opportunity to define themselves and to decide who they want to be, what they want to do, where they want to live. We're a very mobile country. We're a country where you can go to school and hear about lots of ideas and priorities. So be forgiving of yourself if you change your mind. Look, I spent 8 years working as a businessman in the private sector. I spent 10 years in local government. I thought at different points I might be a minister, a lawyer, a business person, and now I'm in the Senate. There isn't one fixed point. You don't have to have it all figured out when you're 18. If you think you have it all figured out when you're 18, it's going to change in some way. So be respectful to your family and your culture and your traditions, but also give yourself some room to grow and be patient with yourself.
So I know you are a father of 3. So
Yes.
do you, what advice would you give your kids the way growing up how you did?
Well, the world's quite different today than it was when I was growing up. I remember my sons asking me what was my favorite website when I was a kid, and I was like, we didn't have the internet yet. And they literally couldn't believe that I somehow survived a world where there were no cell phones, there was no internet, and there were no video games. We nonetheless managed to have good and fruitful lives. Read more, listen more, work on expanding your attention span. One of my concerns is just how short most of us, our attention spans are becoming because we're so distracted by social media. Have some moments of stillness and figure out ways to be true to yourself. You're getting more advice than you might have wanted there.
No, you're fine. So you mentioned reading more. So I do know you came out with a book.
Yes, I wrote a book a long time ago.
Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. So when I returned from Kenya, on the college campus that I was on, work to try and fight the apartheid regime in South Africa was the biggest political issue on college campuses of the time, and I got very involved in it. And I got a job my first year out of college in Washington working for a think tank, which is an organization that does research on policy, and they hired me to write a book. So I spent most of a year writing a book about college campuses, the divestment movement, and its impact on South Africa.
And do you have anything in the works now, years later, or is that done and over with?
I do a lot of speaking and writing. This is something, a book idea that I've been working on, but I am not close to finished. is interviewing 8 different senators, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, about their spirituality, their religious ideas, or the values that inform their service. I'm part of a bipartisan weekly prayer breakfast that has Democrats and Republicans, conservative and liberal. We meet for 1 hour a week. Nobody gets to be there except us. There's no press, there's no staff, there's no lobbyist, anything. And every week, one senator stands up and just talks about their family and their life and their values. And we hear the most remarkable things, stuff that you don't see on cable TV. I worry that your average American sees people in Congress as just these 2-dimensional cardboard cutouts, and they think all we do is fight with each other. The book idea I've got, the title is Profiles in Spirit, is to take those 8 senators and have them do that same 20-minute talk, but in writing. So that if I'm a Democrat, I might pick it up because I really want to read Cory Booker's story. Mm-hmm. But if I read the whole book, I'm finding John Barrasso's story. And I would have the same experience that we're having this Wednesday morning, which is actually hearing each other, getting a sense of each other, because I think we are a little too divided these days. We see each other through a lens that doesn't give humanity to the individuals who are representing our country.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So, no, you're fine. So with the book being about showing stuff that we don't really see on TV, is there anything that we might not know about you that, you know?
Oh, there's lots you might not know about me. I'm just kidding. Look, what I talked about the first time I spoke to that group was how my parents, my dad was a Republican small businessman just trying to run his business. My mom was a school teacher and just trying to raise 3 kids. But they did things that really challenged me and showed me the importance of service. Our church, my mom was fairly active in an effort to welcome a refugee family. Mm-hmm. This was just after the Vietnam War, and a family that had fled the war, that had served, the dad had served in the South Vietnamese Army. They ended up as refugees. They were picked up off the South China Sea by a U.S. Navy vessel and then relocated to the United States. My mom spent a ton of time helping this family. And my dad volunteered doing prison ministry in what is now Vaughn Correctional Center down in Smyrna, mm-hmm. And brought a man home to stay with us on furlough weekends who was a convicted murderer, but was also a part of a Christian group in prison. Neither of my parents would have thought of those things as being the main thing they did, mm-hmm. but they had a huge impact on me. And so I talked about taking risks and what it means as a parent to take risks. To show, not to lecture your kids, but to just gently show what your priorities are. So.
And do you think obviously you do a well job doing that with your own kids, but is there any advice you would give to anybody else?
Is there any advice I would give to anyone else?
Mm-hmm. A parent?
Parenting. Yeah. It's important, this audience, it's important for young people to have structure and to have roles and expectations, but not too much. Young people of all ages, need to make mistakes, need to try things out, need to explore. So I think the biggest challenge in parenting is knowing what that line is. To be a friend and to be a listening ear and to be an open heart, but not to be just a buddy. Because every now and then your job as a parent is to say, this is my house, you won't do that. This is our family, we're not about that. And that's never popular. No child wants their parent laying down the law. So you gotta have a healthy balance.
So I am Lisa Acevedo with Penn News, and that concludes our interview with Senator Chris Coons.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.